I was interested in how the whole process functioned, how the data got from the lunar orbiter to the laboratory. I asked the young man if he'd describe the process to me. He did. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working on compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment, and I did not question him any further.
She was approached by someone who was in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts, right. Who'd said, and the astronauts had told this person who'd come to her that there was a base found on the moon.
Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed. And that is what he told me. And he also was afraid, he said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it.
He was a psychiatrist,
right.
And he worked on the Apollo project.
Right.
And he was involved in the quarantining of the astronauts, and it wasn't nothing to do with quarantining from viruses or bacteria.
From information.
It was the information, and making sure that the astronauts were okay. And he said that the astronauts had told him that about the base on the moon.
And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
One of the theories on Earth is, which comes from Robert Bauval, about the Giza pyramids, is that they represent the stars in Orion's belt.
Yes, yeah.
And there are other researchers, such as I spoke to the historian Alan Wilson, who believes that the mounds in Wales, the ancient mounds, he believes that they map to the stars. They are laid out in known constellations.
Yeah. The most compelling stuff to me about the artificiality of Cydonia is the geometry.
Yeah.
It's the repeating angles.
I agree.
Within the complex.
I'm not sold on the face, but just when you look at that plan view.
Yeah, this is from Richard Hoagland's Enterprise Mission website, and it basically has repeating angle 19.5 degrees, repeating out throughout the complex. The DNM pyramid has got the same angle repeating. It's got all sorts of the mathematical constants going to be deduced from it. It's got its own symmetry, and it's all kind of the pentagonal, hexagonal symmetry. To me, that is compelling. 95% it's artificial, 5%. Well, we still need to prove it. Famous headlines in newspapers about the kind of.
It does look very human-like.
It's got the right pose. I don't see that as evidence for life on Mars at all. It's fascinating because if there was, then yeah, it's interesting, but it doesn't prove it. It can't prove it. It isn't capable of proving the argument to me.
Yeah.
But that makes me wonder why it was pushed so heavily in the media as well.
Well, you see, I think the actual image that appeared on was a massive landscape, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and if you look at the whole landscape, you can't actually see it. You have to zoom right into it.
It's right in the bottom left-hand corner.
Right in the bottom corner.
Yeah.
So maybe, I'm only theorising here, maybe NASA let that image go out, not realising that there was a human-like artefact in it, and it slipped through the net.
Well,
maybe there are thousands of other images that have got statues on them, but they always filter them out. It's accepted that every person on the planet is basically directly descended from pretty much one Eve in Africa. If we draw a tree, branches of a tree, which is mankind sort of spreading his genes and spreading the race, it goes back to a point, and that point is between 200 and 300,000 years ago, and everyone agrees on that.
Right.
But what they don't agree on is whether that was the absolute start, or whether there was some other link to. It's actually one branch off another larger branch.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the argument is, did we in fact begin completely wholly at that point, or did we squeeze through that bottleneck, and prior to that we were something else, but we were very close enough to human, so that while all of them died out, all that were left were still pretty much the same thing.
Now, that said, you put forward the argument that at that point in time, when the start of that tree, that was the start, that there wasn't this link.
Right. I contend that at 200,000 years ago, we were the result of genetic engineering over the course of some particular length of time. I don't know, really can't say how much, but the end product of that genetic engineering is us. And they get the final product around 200,000 years ago, and it begins to spread from that point. Species can have genetic flaws, genetic defects. That's not an issue. They don't have nearly as many as we do. We have over 4,000 and counting genetic defects in our gene pool. So if we have a 200,000-year-old gene pool, how do you get 4,000 plus genetic defects? It's just implausible.
Now, so it's suggesting that it's been messed with, basically.
There's that evidence, and then there's just the physical evidence of our genome showing very clearly that the second and third chromosome in humans that is in primates has been fused. I mean, genetically fused, so that its telomeres on its ends are cut off of the second and the third, and they've been put together in such a way that they still function. And that's extremely unlikely to have occurred naturally. Now, science says yes, it does, but really it doesn't.
So you would presume, if you go by the theory of this link, that was when the chromosome must have been dropped.
Exactly. When the two chromosomes were fused, it would be in the time leading up to the actual creation of human beings as we are today,
Right.
yes.
Now, even if we accept the fact that we all came from this theoretical or actual Eve, which was, let's say it was 200,000 years ago, the anthropologists will say, well, yes, but the population went down to 1 or 2, but they actually evolved from apes. So therefore, if their theory is correct, there has to be an infinite number of, going by Darwinian evolution, an infinite number of adjustments from, say, 8 million years ago to now, through that, even down through that tree that we call it.
Exactly.
But you've looked at that, the evidence of bones, or either
Right.
fossils or bones, to see whether the anthropological things that people dig up suggest that there is a linear path from, say, 8 million years ago to now.
In every way, for the next 2 million years, up to Cro-Magnons, you have that particular look with the brains growing bigger. So there's no evolution there. There's no change. It's dramatic overhauls, like overnight.
So there's no gradual set of skulls where the brow ridge is gradually diminished to what we have.
That collectively science calls the missing link. And they just keep insisting that they're going to find the missing link someday, because it has to be there for their theory to be true. But in fact, there is no missing link. They haven't ever found one, and they're not going to find one. They keep saying they do, but they never do. We just suddenly appear. I didn't know where we came from. I had no idea. I couldn't find anything that scientifically satisfied my level of need for something that I could defend until I read Zecharia Sitchin's work in about 1990. And as soon as I read The 12th Planet, I said, that's what I've been needing. That's the answer. Because while I could say that humans didn't evolve on Earth, that Earth belonged to the hominoids, and I couldn't say when or how we came here. I didn't really understand that. The tablets say about 350 to 400,000 years ago, so they could have as much as 150 to 200,000 years here before they felt a need to create us, yes.
And tell us what that need was, Lloyd.
The need to create us was that they were few, and they had a big job to do. They were collecting gold. They needed a lot of gold to repair their atmosphere. Again, this is according to the writings of the Sumerians. Right. Created to be their slaves and their servants, to do their mining, to do, just take care of them. We're not primates. We're essentially them.
Right.
So in doing that, they dumbed us down. You don't want your slave or your servant to be as intelligent as you are by any stretch. You don't want it even as close, or live as long. Exactly, that's another thing. You want them to be expendable. You want them to be parts of the machine. So when you come down to our intelligence, they had to really dumb us down. If we've got their brains in our heads, and it's clear that we do, we have a brain that's totally unlike any other higher primate, totally in every way. So let's assume we have their brain in our head. If we do, and I believe that we do, then we have a phenomenal tool in our heads. So they just denied access to us of most of the firepower that they were giving us.
People such as Bob Lazar has mentioned that they have actually tinkered with our genetics in the past several times?
I firmly believe that. I got that impression as well,
Really?
from a question that I had asked. I believe that at some point in our history they have intermingled with our DNA.
Right.
Well, as a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, he obviously had held great weight in confirming for many people the possible authenticity of these abduction reports. Well, looking at the evidence from Professor Jacobs and Bud Hopkins' research into abduction episodes, it does seem to be the case that these grey alien beings that people encounter in the abduction episodes, they seem to have no sense of emotion, no sense of any countenance of whatever might be going on in the people they abduct.
All right.
And they started to abduct human females for testing for this genetic procedure that they were going to conduct. And when I say they, it was a joint project with the alien race, whatever you want to call it, and the American government. And
So let me just interrupt you there, Dan. So they were abducting human women to see if they had certain genetic characteristics to be chosen to then give birth to you.
Yes.
And you said it was joint, so you think that, because you describe it as a military abduction, so it's not necessarily military, it's a joint thing. So do you think, you think it's the alien technology that was being used for the abduction rather than the military technology?
Oh yeah, I think, let me back up here. The actual abductions themselves were conducted by the aliens.
Right.
And the procedures were done by the aliens. I say it was in conjunction with the military because the military knew about it. And he mentioned that this was a project called Project Preserve Destiny, and it started in the early 60s as a result of communication that the American government had with an alien race in 1947.
Right. Allegedly, what happened was that concern was expressed that the aliens had been carrying out abductions, and that the US military said to them, look, we want to know who you're abducting, where they're being taken from, we want lists, etc. So I've actually just made the assumption that you receiving the abduction reports was possibly them agreeing that they're part of that agreement.
That's an interesting correlation. I had never really thought of that, but that's entirely possible, yeah.
Right. 1,500 sheep disappeared in one night from a remote Lincolnshire field.
Are you able to give me any information on the actual gate and the lock? Because I've had a look at the lock on the gate, and it's not a new lock. Do you know if the gate was open or closed when the first person appeared on the? Sorry.
I seem to remember it was padlocked as well.
It was padlocked as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything in that.
As it is today, still in situ, not been touched at all.
There are no suspects. There is no evidence of an insurance job. There is no physical evidence. There are no witnesses. The field was padlocked and all entrances were undisturbed, showing no evidence of rustling. A huge egg-shaped UFO was witnessed in the area during the same month. What does the evidence point to? Does it point to this? Or does it point to this? Throughout the world, including parts of the UK, since at least 1954, animals known to be in perfect physical health are found dead with very peculiar injuries on and inside their bodies. The nature of the injuries is surgical and cannot be explained by animal predation. This has been confirmed by pathologists. Although thousands of cases worldwide are known about, no human being has ever been seen, caught or arrested for mutilation incidents. Bright orange or white spheres of light are sometimes witnessed in the areas where animals are found. So that's a summary of the phenomenon. The Animal Pathology Field Unit, who've been investigating these cases for the last 10 years. And it's not easy for them because the government are covering up, and I will come on to that. Like I said, David Caton at the top, Mike Freebury and Phil Hoyle. Phil Hoyle has been investigating cases in Shropshire, Mike Freebury down on Dartmoor, and you know, some of their evidence, it's just unbelievable. Now, they've had the help of Professor Tony Fremont, who is he's a human pathologist, but he helped them out. They would take tissue samples to him, and if you were to speak to Tony Fremont, he would say to you, there's something completely inexplicable going on here. So that gave their group a high degree of credibility, the fact that they had a pathologist on board. Now, I'm just going to quickly whiz round this diagram and explain some of the classic injuries that I found, because my Member of Parliament, Dave Anderson, has actually submitted a parliamentary question to the Secretary of State, Jim Fitzpatrick, asking him when he's going to reply to Richard D. Hall's correspondence about animal mutilation. There was a House of Lords debate in 1979 where one of the Lords said that Russia and America signed a secret pact in 1973 to share UFO information so that neither side thought that the UFO was Russia or American. Yeah, John Duffield said that to me, that, look, Richard, leave that alone, leave it alone, because they're actually protecting the masses by doing this. Well, I don't buy that. I think we're ready. Even then, even in the 40s when they knew about it, they should have just bit the bullet and told everyone.
What happens if they do tell everybody? You don't know.
Well, you don't. But I think we'll get out of bed the next morning and go, bloody hell, we're not alone in the universe. I think religion will take a kick in the bollocks. Richard, why on earth are you tackling David Cameron? He does not have the authority to reveal the truth about UFOs. Well, of course, I know that, but I'm trying to bring publicity to the cause.
Will you seek to lift the veil of secrecy and tell the public the truth?
By doing that. It's not just because I think David Cameron's going to tell the truth about UFOs. It's a whole trying to raise the profile of the subject. Staying on the subject of UFOs, the White House recently gave a public statement on UFOs, responding to a petition signed by thousands of Americans requesting the federal government disclose the existence of alien intelligences on Earth. The Obama administration responded by issuing a terse statement denying any knowledge of the issue. The US government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet or that any extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public eye.
Warning, bullshit alert!
Never believe anything until it is officially denied is particularly relevant in this case.
There are some lies that are too big ever to be revealed without basically destroying yourself. And this is, I mean, the UFO issue is bigger than 9/11.
He says in this letter to you, my position is, and always has been, that there are physical objects, almost certainly not man-made, regularly detected in Earth's atmosphere. Disclosure suggests we want you to tell us all of your secrets, whereas an acknowledgement just suggests, well, we want you to acknowledge that what we already know is correct.
Once you acknowledge something, then you've let the genie out of the bottle, and once you said, well, yes, what you saw existed, there's no going back.
Can just imagine what's going to happen is people would be sitting there listening to this speech, and during the course, in a few minutes after they'd heard Obama or Cameron saying this, they'd be listing in their heads all of human history for the last 70 years and thinking of how different it would have been if the government admitted it, and it would be different beyond belief. We're saying that all the poverty, all the famine, all the millions of people who died of hunger in the third world, all the wars for oil, all the environmental destruction that's taken place because of pollution,
burning of fossil fuels,
deforestation, burning fossil fuels, it's all been for nothing. It was all preventable. It'd be like confessing to the worst crime in human history, and we'd never trust them again.